Charter schools across the country were held to be the salvation for a public school system that mine and your tax dollars paid for. In the arena comes charter schools, when everyone said that this would help to better educate our children. And it may have, but which children was the aim to help better educate? My guest tonight is Dr. Ruth Baskerville. She is a retired principal of a charter school and the author of a book that's called Hoodless Klan. Dr. Ruth Baskerville, thank you so much for being our guest tonight on Authors in Conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Baskerville will be one of the 150 authors that will be part of the Sunshine State Book Festival in Gainesville, Florida, January 27th and 28th at Trinity United Methodist Church. You'll get a chance to meet her as well as other authors in all kinds of different genres of books. And I am so thrilled to be able to share your story today on Authors in Conversation. I'm Pamela Marshall, your host and the author of my book, The Art of Forgiveness. Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Baskerville. Hoodless Klan. Why did you name your book Hoodless Klan?
You know, the book itself, I'm just going to hold it up for anybody who can maybe see it, but I'll tell you, the book itself wound up being 450, which I'm a ghostwriter and an editor, and most of the books are about 150, 200 and something. This was really God. We called it Hoodless. My husband was alive then. He is now deceased. But I was a principal in a charter school for 4 years. I had been a seasoned principal for years. I had even been central office, head of curriculum, head of personnel. Like, education is my thing. And I'm now 46 years in education. So this was my first and only charter school experience, but it certainly wasn't a new experience in the sense that I was a novice at teaching and learning, helping staff to become the best they could be. So I become this principal. The difference in a charter school is you have a governing board. So you, the principal, report to the superintendent and the community and all that. But on top of that, you have a governing board, and that's a group supposed to be mixed from the whole, like, in other words, the population of the student body should, in a perfect world, be reflected in the governance board. So it might be 12 members, 13, 15, it depends on what they vote. And then they actually help govern the school. Well, when something like that is skewed, when it's just one end of town, when it's one race of people, one kind of people, what you get then is like a militia. You get a group that want to browbeat you as the leader of the school. And this was the beginning of this. So I was approached by some church-going members of the community in very, very high standing, saying that they did not want the Black kids in the gifted classes with their kids. Mind you, it's a state thing that you qualify to become part of a gifted program. You don't pay for it, and you really can't be locked out of it. So this was racism. And my race is mixed, Russian, Jewish, African American, and Native American. So perhaps they mistook my race. But when they approached me like that, I simply said, I love all. There are 1,000 kids. I love them all. But I could never do anything like that as long as I'm the principal. And all they heard was, as long as you're the principal. That's what they left with. And so for 4 years, there was this massive conspiracy, really, with just people in all layers of the community buying in, because then I became the enemy. So anyway,
you were a victim of a whisper campaign.
Oh my goodness. Exactly. And the last person to know it was naive me, old as I was. I always believed they'll know who I am. They'll see me tomorrow morning. I'm the same down to earth human being, education to my core, quality. I don't skimp on standards. So I was fired. Then I was retired. I came back home to Florida. This was in another state. And my husband, and I was so depressed because I thought, this cannot be the end of my really stellar career. And my husband wisely said, write it, like journal,
Hmm.
but I have a gift for writing. That's why I'm now a ghostwriter and an editor. Writing is my gift from heaven. And so as I wrote, he said, "You got a book. This, keep going. I'll cook. You write." And I wrote
Really?
this book. And we were about 90 pages into the book. Didn't have a title. And I said, as I was writing some stuff, I said, these people don't even wear hoods. They're like in your face racists. They don't even wear hoods. And some kind of way, must be God. Both of us said Hoodless Klan with a K. It's a Hoodless Klan. And there was the title born in the 90th page, just by recounting one of many, many stories.
What are some of the stories? Dr. Baskerville has written a book, as she said. The title of the book is Hoodless Klan. She was a principal of a school and encountered racism, encountered those who wanted to dictate the way she was running the school, and then later fired. And there was a lawsuit. But before that, what are some of the examples of the things that happened to you as you were trying to do your job?
Oh my goodness. Um, well, one example that just comes directly to my mind is, so there's three little girls on the playground. They're second grade. They're 7 years old. Two of them are white. One of them is black. And one of the little white girls had a necklace that was given to her by her mom or dad, and it was supposed to be a mood necklace. So if you change your mood, the necklace will change colors. Okay, well, there's seven. So on the playground, she says to the other two little girls, well, like hit me, do something to change my mood because we want to see the necklace change. And it happened that the little black girl slapped her at her request. She got upset. She was crying. Now, I don't know any of this. Nobody reported it. They didn't report it to the adults. They went on playing, and the ring never changed. The necklace never did change. And so the next day, a parent, part of the group, sends an email to me and copies the entire Board of Ed. So inappropriate. You just call up and say, my kid came home and said somebody slapped her, let's investigate. So I didn't know anything. Well, what I found out, I brought the little kids in and they all started to cry. And I sat very close to them and didn't want them afraid. And when I heard the story, I understood immediately what had happened. I'm not suspending anybody. This is not a black child slapped my daughter. And apparently it didn't hurt enough to go to the nurse, tell the teacher, and they were still the best of friends. And I knew in my heart that friendship was going to end right now. I knew it. And the one that was going to feel it and feel the pain would be the black kid, that the white parents would it would happen. It usually happens about third grade because I've been in, schools that are mixed, all African-American, all Italian, just lots of situations. But at that third grade mark, generally the races split. So I responded because I'm feisty too, and I also know my rights. I responded and I copied the whole Board of Ed and basically reduced it to what it was, a silly little something on the playground. The kids were crying, oh, don't suspend us, don't get us in. They loved each other for that one moment. And when they left my office, I almost cried because I knew that the parent was never going to accept the explanation, though I presented it, that it's what they wanted to have. I want there to be a problem. So, and I'll just tell you another really silly one. When the HR person, they needed a reason finally to get rid of me. My work was impeccable. The staff loved me. The kids were great. I didn't have any issues. So the head of human resources said, you raised your voice to a child. And no principal in the entire county, the entire state had ever done that. And this was a kid who took another kid's lunch money. He had two lunches and that little one had none. And I saw him in the hall and I said, my office now. I love the little guy. I knew him since first grade. I knew his mom. I knew his grandmother. They even said, we don't have any problem with her. Are you kidding? But that was the crime. They needed something, and that was the crime. So they were going to terminate me, not knowing that not only do I have the smarts, but the financial resources to sue, which is exactly what I did. Well, I was told not to return to my building, just like that. And my lunch was there, my telephone charge. So I went back into.
Well, this is in the middle of the day?
Yes, I went back in to kind of get my stuff. And don't you know, by the time I still was obeying. I mean, my superiors, I had to do that. And by the time that I got home, don't you know, I got a call. They sent the bomb squad, the hazardous material squad, to go through the building. Now, it truly, it hurt me to my heart, but I didn't let that show. The fact is, now, the fact is, if you're black, and we are now going to terminate you, even though, of course, I'm gonna fight it, and I won. But at the time, all black people what have weapons? All black people want to hurt. You needed the bomb squad. You needed to do that when, and I was there 4 years, so you knew every single thing about me and all of this. But these are the kinds of things, these needling, maddening, um, racist things, and it was like a snowball going down. And so I wrote a book. I
They
wrote a
sent the
book.
bomb squad
Yes.
because you were not accused of hitting a child. You were
No.
accused of raising your
Raising
voice,
my voice to a child. Yes.
and you got fired.
Hmm. And then they had to back it up because, of course, I got a lawyer.
Miss Maureen Henry in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, a retired educator, is watching. She says, "Good evening." And I would imagine she has some stories from the state of Mississippi. Jesse Moore in
Uh-huh.
Jackson, Tennessee. Hello, Pam, and your guest. This story of you being you being bullied, being forced out of your job. When you came home and told your husband what happened, what was his reaction?
Well, it was such a long saga, betrayals over here, little things over there. Because 4 years, I stayed 4 years and kept my job and kept the image of the school straight as an hour. Everybody was pleased. The kids were high achieving. The staff was stable. Like all of the data that you use to judge the health of a building and the health of a principal, because the principal really is the key to setting the climate in a building. All of that was running in the midst of all this. And of course, I kept it to myself. But my husband, he was very wise. And he would say to me, well, this isn't right. Something is, and me, I was like, oh, Pshaw, there can't be a real problem afoot. And it kind of came in different waves. And the last things that happened, I see me, a picture of me on the 6 o'clock news, and some reporter saying, yes, I interviewed Dr. Baskerville, never met the person. I didn't understand that if you're a public figure, you don't have to be like a celebrity or a major athlete, just a public figure like me. All bets are off. They can take your picture, they can say they did this stuff with you, and so on. And it was just, it became a principal's primer, because I'll tell you, you know how you want to teach other people how to become an administrator, a principal. And I actually had a group of, oh God, about 20 assistant principals, directors of curriculum resource people in buildings trying to move up. And we used Hoodless Klan. I had no idea they wanted to use this book, because everything that could happen to a principal, from the community input to the choosing of sides to the outside stuff, to the betrayal of a board of ed and a superintendent and so on, is in the book. So I used it as a teaching tool of how you can maneuver, and always with class and dignity, always, but stand your ground. And I'll say this. I would say to these young ones, you will find in your career, and I would say this to everybody, you will find, whatever your career, there's a point where it's like that line in the sand, where if you cross that line, you lose your soul. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you compromise this? Do you look the other way? Do you take something? Do you engage in corruption? Do you steal? There's always that line. And for me, that was the line. I couldn't begin to cross it. I couldn't live with me if I did. So I didn't. But you always have to brace for the hit, because you know it's coming. So
Uh,
I would
uh, uh,
say both of those.
yeah, I do. You think that because we don't talk about the number of African American teachers and principals and coaches who lost their jobs after desegregation.
Hmm.
We didn't hear about it. We were just so glad that black kids could go to school with white kids. And do you find that, or do you think that educators have been painfully silent in what has happened and what continues to happen in our school systems with children, black and brown children?
It comes down to, we all have a life. We have a family, we have bills, we have that, and then we have a career. And what the other side, if I could choose sides for a moment, leans on is that for the sake of your job, to keep yourself employed, to keep yourself in this position with this title or whatever, you will do what we like. And not enough of us take that stand. There'll be another, God will send another job. I never have worried about working. I worked all my life. I never had a break. I didn't have a gap where, oh, you shouldn't have done that, now you're going to be unemployed. I never had that happen because of faith. But I understand how it is. And the other problem is sometimes everybody's not as aware. You have to really be attuned. Like as a principal, for example, when they send kids to me for discipline, and I notice, number one, there's a disproportionate number of these minority kids. They only make up 8% of the school, but they're like 48. The teacher, who's sending? That's what I'm doing. Who's sending you? And then you begin to see a pattern of the adults. That's a good principal who will do that. And then, as good as you can, call the teacher. Can we apply some resources? Can we do some interdisciplinary training? Can we shadow another teacher? I never have a mindset of you're fired or anything like that, the way I was treated. That's not where I would be, but it would be that we want to make the best, have you become the best that you can be. And if in the end, that's never been your goal, to say, I didn't realize, or I can be helped, or here's somebody who can show me some little tricks or whatever. If that's not your goal, then I had no issue saying, yeah, I need to recommend your termination. But the thing is, nothing happened without months and months of help. And a good principal is like a doormat. There's nothing you won't do to help a quality teacher. But what you cannot do is let somebody who will tell you, like, I've had this, I'm 2 years from retirement. I was great, 10 years ago. I need to just know, because the kids don't get a second chance to do fifth grade, third grade. They don't get a second chance. So as gently as I can, as sensitively as I can, I have to say, no, you have to go, because the kids have to be first. And that's my philosophy with that.
When you look at where our school system is today, with the graduation rate for African American children compared to the graduation rate when schools were segregated, what are your thoughts on that? How did we get to be so dumb? Because that's what it looks like. If we believe our low graduation rate, but see, here's for me, why didn't we think to say, wait a minute, these kids can't be that much dumber? Because if they were graduate, but we bought into the fact that we had an inferior education when we were all Black schools. So once you integrate, you thought the standard was higher. And so your children are not doing well because the standard is higher. When in fact it wasn't, it was just the treatment.
But it's bigger than that. I was actually an assistant superintendent in a district up north in New Jersey. And this district, I made a joke when I was hired there, because I said, oh my goodness, brunettes are the minority in your town. I just had never seen so many people from the Mayflower. But there was a pocket of African American students, non-achieving, low, and they lived in what they called the projects. I called them garden apartments. They were just so sweet and cute with little flower boxes, but it was their ghetto, you understand. And I did my doctoral dissertation in that town, and it was about what causes I used middle and high school, what causes the students and the parents, African American students and parents, to recoil from like a wonderful school system with every opportunity for academic success that you can imagine. And as I dug deeper, I found a phrase called, called fictive kinship. fictive kinship, like fiction in the research,
Fictive
and
kinship.
kinship is for us, for Black people. We all kids, teenagers have a need to belong, and they'll do anything to fit in, especially, eighth grade, ninth, 10th, 11th. That's the area where they just have to belong. They have to belong. But if you're Black and high achieving the way you choose to belong, it's worse than the quote dumb blonde thing where you want to get the boyfriend, so you pretend it's worse. It's deeper. It's in your soul that
Mm,
says, I must deliberately not achieve so that I can have friends. And so what they did was pull each other down. The other thing that I discovered was the treatment from, once again, the staff. So you have a smart kid come, the parents are right on top of the education. They move to this kind of a community, very fancy, they struggle to get there. And then they think, well, I finally made it. My kid is in a really good school system, so I can walk away. No, African American parents, we can never walk away
yeah.
and assume they're going to take care of us, because they don't. So some of the staff, what they would do is, let me see your schedule, go back to your counselor, I'm sure there's a mistake, things like that. The other kids had study groups that they had already formed since first
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah.
So desegregation was no service to Black kids. If you're it's kind of like the Little Rock Nine. If you go where you're not wanted, I don't mean just by the kids, you're not wanted by the adults who have to teach you,
Yeah.
then everything is a sneer, a snicker, and we all have egos, we all have feelings. We need to feel like, somebody, it's okay that I'm here. Not everywhere I look, I'm not wanted, I'm not accepted. So I go the other way into myself. And what do? In doing that, I fulfill the prophecy that I am less, that I am dumber. And there's another layer, the critical race theory. The other layer is, do you know, I graduated high school in 1965. I had never seen an African American face in my books, my history books, my literature books, until I got to college, with the
Mhm.
possible exception of someone like, oh,
Harriet Tubman,
Harriet. Yeah, the same. I don't want to
Booker
say
T. Yeah,
right,
the same five.
three or four. And I would never have known. We built the country. I would never have known. We were cowboys, Buffalo Soldiers. I would never know any of it except for the education I got beyond. So now think of the subliminal stuff that goes in a kid's head when everything you touch, in every class you go, you're not there. There's that psychological piece, and the damage sometimes, if there's no way to rectify it, like a good home environment, your parents, African American parents, taking you to museums. If you don't have all of that, if you don't have print rich material, books in the home, and parents who are sharp enough to say, we're going to school. They did that. He said that. We're going to school. If you don't have that, you understand, you just do. You almost like a flower. Your petals go in, and now you're grown. And worse, now you're a parent. Do you see the damage, the
Yeah.
generational damage that has happened to all of us? Because, as you said at the beginning, we trusted them too much. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
I would like to take ownership of that quote, but the late Representative Barbara Cooper, a retired educator in Memphis who passed away less than a month ago, talked about the damage that was done to African American children and the African American community through school desegregation. And also, Dr. Baskerville, I was working on a documentary interviewing children, Black children who were part of like the first Black children to go to a white school when they were desegregating the schools. And the stories were so sad. I mean, grown men in their 60s crying. One who was going to be the starter on the football team at his school. And he had to go to a white school, and they wouldn't even let him on the team. He
Yeah.
was going to be the quarterback.
Yeah.
And through desegregation, he had to go through high school, which that was so deflating for him. Wasn't even able to be on the team. And then others who talked about getting on the bus and the bus driver pulling up. or stopping real hard so that they could all fall because white kids wouldn't let them sit on the seats on the bus. So think about having to go to school and trying to learn in that environment. One young lady said that her mother told her, because her mother questioned her grades, and she said, "Well, I raised my hand, but she won't call on me." And her mother told her to keep her hand up. She said she went through the next school semester holding her hand up like this because her mother told her to hold it up, but the teacher would never call on her. We're not hearing those stories, thus, we don't understand the condition that our children are in today because we have been silent about these kind of stories, about what educators went through, as well as what children went through and continue to go through in our schools today. Thank you.
Right. Right. And the thing is, the damage that happens when you're 5 and 6 and 7 it can be severe enough to carry you all the way through school, all the way
For your
thinking,
life.
yeah, that you are, that you literally, I am nothing. I don't belong. I never was. The only thing I was a slave so that they could whip me. And that's about the end of my history, as opposed to kings and queens. And I mean, the real history. So those who are fighting the critical race, there's no such thing as critical race, anything. What it is called truth. It's
Just
nothing
true.
but truth. This is the history. The ugly American is true. Our country is built on cursed soil. And I grew up, I pledge allegiance. I grew up too, our forefathers and everything. But I didn't even know that there were Black people in the very beginning. Read your history, you find that there were many who were there also with the founding fathers and stuff, but you wouldn't think there was an African American anywhere until we were slaves, no power, and ignorant at that, so that we don't get to feel good about ourselves, that kind of thing. And so someone who comes along, a principal, a good principal, good teachers, will go against that. Now that mom who said hold your hand, just a little more feisty mom, a little bit more angry Black woman, just a little more, she would have said we're going to school. Why? Because the teacher says this is a percent of the grade participation.
Hmm.
You don't call on her, how can she get an F in participation, which brings her whole grade down? Well, now that teacher will begin to call on her. Do you understand? But if it's just me and the kid, I have all the power, like the one that was sending kids to me. I have all the power. I don't ever have to call on you. And then I can grade you down because no one's coming. So the other thing I think we need to do so much more at every grade level, like college level, is we need like our own study group. We need to lift each other up and help each other. That's a big deal. So that if you're struggling, my kid's struggling, your kid's struggling, let's get a tutor together. Let's see if we can't help work this thing, as opposed to all of us like silos. I don't know why that is. But
Because we've always suffered in silence, because we didn't think anybody would hear us. It didn't matter. Like this child's mother, she had gone to segregated schools, remember?
yeah.
Her daughter was the first to go to the white school. So I'm sure she didn't feel like she had the right to go say anything to the teacher.
Hmm.
Then today, the only stories that we hear out of schools today are these Black parents want to come up here and beat the teacher up. Well, not every Black parent is that way.
Hmm. And I was principal here. I only had one assignment here in Florida when I came to Florida from New York, New Jersey. And it was in Orlando, Ivy Lane Elementary School. And they had just gotten a double F. In Florida, you get a grade, a literal
Hmm.
grade.
Hmm.
And so double F, right? And so the superintendent pulled me over to that school. And the first thing I thought was, well, Ivy Lane to Ivy League. And this is a book I must write. I must write. So in 2 years, by doing everything out of the box, these are the kids, same kids. They were way below fifth graders, counting on their fingers, kids throwing chairs, cursing. It was just a really strange, a very violent place. And there just wasn't much love. And the teachers who were there couldn't get out. The kids who were there couldn't get out. You know what I mean? Out. Well, in 2 years, we turned the school grade around from a double F to 5 from an A, 5 points from an A. Well, how did those kids get so smart? it was a massive thing. This is a long story, but how they got so smart was we changed the climate. We changed the climate in the school. It changed the climate of the parents. It changed the climate of the teachers, and it changed the climate of the school, of the kids. And so learning, there was a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Baskerville, not only have you lived this, but you continue to show your love for kids in your tutoring program that you just talked about.
Yeah.
Tell
You
us
know,
about that.
I became a widow in 2012. My husband of 45 years passed. He did not see me as a published author, but he read every word of Hoodless Klan. And the day that I sent it to one publisher because I didn't know publishing then. And the day we got the email, they were pleased to take my manuscript. He died that day. So he read every word, he knew everything, but he pushed me on my way to writing. I've since written 3 books, 2 more, finding
Wow.
humor in grief, because humor follows me, and I was able to find humor in the midst of that incredible sadness and beauty for ashes, like where God says He'll give you beauty for ashes. He'll take your mourning and give you joy. So I wrote 2 books since then, really dedicated to Waverly. But my income had dropped because suddenly I'm a widow. And I was thinking, and he had a lot of toys, guns and swords and a really fancy car and all this stuff. And after I sold stuff, and I remember sitting in my kitchen and saying, well, God, what will you have me to do? Do I foreclose? Do I leave? Like, how do I actually continue doing these things? And that's when he dropped ghostwriting on me,
Mm.
which Waverly had started by Hoodless Klan and the 2 books I wrote. And just 2 hours after I sat there and heard these things, somebody called and said, can you help me write my book? I have all this in me. It's got to get out, but I don't have words. And I said, yes, I can. And don't you know, now I have 68 published authors, 68
What?
published authors and counting. It's just nothing. I give all the credit above me. I really do. But right before the pandemic, I got Waverly's Way. Waverly's Way. And my friend you already interviewed, Free Harris, my
Yeah,
dear
oh my
friend.
gosh, what a book. Did you
Yes,
do her book?
yes, I did. I
Oh,
edited her book. I did.
wow.
But she actually said, well, God, right? Waverly's Way, in his name, because he was not an educator. He was a Wall Street corporate tax guy, but he had this excellence about him. Like, kids around him would tuck in and, straighten up. That's just who he was. Um, and Waverly's Way is tutoring from kindergarten to a doctorate. Kindergarten all
Wow.
the way to a doctorate, GED, second level college, master's thesis, third grade to a doctorate. And I've been blessed with 75 tutors, many from the university, Nova Southeastern, and universities where they're medical students and dying to give back and do some things. And so the tutoring of the kids, we build that esteem along with that skill. So everybody has a real caring, a real caring. So when kids come to us and they need tutoring, it's, yeah, what do you need? What skill? What test? What homework? But also, how do you feel? How you doing? And inevitably, it is the system that has beaten down kids.
Mm.
My teacher said they taught it last year and I didn't get it. And so therefore, I don't care. You could be just like Ivy Lane. I don't care if fifth graders are counting on their fingers. You know what? We instituted, it was FCAT was the state test, the Florida something. Now it's the FSA, Florida Standards Assessment. So I created a mall. We had an FCAT mall right there in the school, and the kids could use points to get, oh my God, dishes, comforters, technology, bikes. We had so much inventory donated because everybody sort of fell in love with Ivy Lane. And don't you know, went the day of the FCAT mall right before the big test, better than Lean on Me, because that principal, Joe Clark, they never did get out of F under him, but the movie they did. But in me, it was real life. We moved. And here the kids were, they're online, and there were all the parents who were always afraid to come to school. And the
Ah,
poor kids with their clipboards with points they earned for doing the right thing, learning stuff. They were, Ma, how much is that dress? how many they could add, subtract, multiply, and divide because it mattered. There was no handout. They earned all that stuff, and they got, and the whole
Yes.
went, and learning went up just like that. You just had to have a mall. You just had to open up a store like a certificate of occupancy, but it was worth it. By my best assignment by far, even though it was the toughest. But that's what you do to raise the standard for kids.
Monroe Ballard, watching in Memphis, Tennessee, said 68 books. That's huge. That's amazing. That is amazing. So, as I've interviewed authors, there have been many people. Louise was on last night watching with us, and she was asking questions about publishing. You are available
Oh,
for to help people publish. So if you're watching and we all have stories to tell and you need somebody to help guide you, get in touch with Dr. Ruth Baskerville. How do people find you?
oh, well, there's two things. My email is very simple. It's WR Waverly Ruth, WR Baskerville at gmail.com. So that's easy. But I have a website. And if you go to www.excellence.org, www.wwexcellence.org, you will see the front covers and testimonials of almost all the published authors. You'll see my books, my face, and the tutoring and just everything there. And you can reach me. But if you email me, I'll always email you back. And if you just want to talk, I am not on the clock until we actually have an agreement. If you want to ask any question about writing, publishing, what do I do to get started, I am absolutely available all the time. So yeah,
Well,
this was Hoodless, Finding Humor, Beauty for Ashes. Now,
yeah.
all my books are on Amazon. You could go to Amazon and you could get them. There's no problem with that. But I always say get them through me because I was blessed to get gold and silver medals for all three of them. And so I put those,
Wow. So an award-winning
yes,
author, no less.
all of me.
Congratulations.
I was blessed with that. And so I put the stickers, and I love to write a personal note. I like to know who's asking for this book. And is it something like Finding Humor in Grief? Can I name the lost person? It doesn't have to be a mate. It could be a child, a mom, whatever it is. And I'm able to sort of do, and then I'll send it to you. So I always say, come to me first. But yes, you can always go to Amazon as well.
Beauty for Ashes.
Hmm.
Well, Dr. Ruth Baskerville, you are certainly a beautiful person on the inside and outside. Thank you for what you have done. Thank you for um, standing in the gap for these children, for adults who have felt like they didn't have a voice. What's your advice to those who are watching who may feel like, well, I'm not sure if there's anything else I can do? I'm at the end of my career, or those who are still in the school systems. What's your advice to them?
I would say call me because I mean I certainly don't have a degree in therapy, but I've just been through so much and my heart has never changed and I'm so grateful to God for that. That I never got jaded or nothing like that. And so I have a lot of mother wit. I'm 75. So I
You
know
look beautiful.
you get old, some stuff to just like what you think you may want to do. The people who have written books, some of them have the idea that I just have this burning, I have to tell this story. I don't know where to begin. Call me if you're worried about your child in school. I know the lingo and it can help give you just tips that you can advocate for your child. Because one thing I know it as a principal, I know it as an associate superintendent, that the squeaky wheel really does get the oil. And so if just one parent comes to say, I need to see the principal because I don't understand, my child is raising her hand all the time and never being, I need to have a little bit of intervention in that. People's habits change. Not that they want them to, their hearts don't change, but their habits change. And all I need is the habit to change so I can make it to the next level with my
Yeah,
heart intact and with my academic worth being honored. That's
yeah.
what I would say.
We so appreciate you being willing to offer your wisdom, your sage wisdom that you have gathered over the years. Monroe Ballard, does that mean that you're opening a school in Memphis, a Celestine March? I hope that's what he's going to do. He's an outstanding young man and minister. A Celestine March says, thank you for sharing your story, Dr. Baskerville. Can you share your email address again?
Yes. W.R. Baskerville, Baskerville at gmail.com. You can email me right after this program. I'm sitting at the computer. W.R. Baskerville at Gmail. And I can tell you the website and all that. If you just have my email, please reach out. I live in Central Florida, but I've been known to travel. And I'm a great like keynote speaker, motivational speaker, because I believe in us. I believe in all of us. I believe in humanity. It has to prevail. So I hope to hear from any. And I can't wait to see you in person, Pamela, to be at this. This is the first time that I'll be at this book festival, but it will not be the last.
Well, I'm so looking forward to meeting you as well and being able to sit at your feet and just get the overflow that God is pouring into you. I thank you again so much, and I thank all of you all for watching this edition of Authors in Conversation with this trailblazer, Dr. Ruth Baskerville. Not only is she an educator, but she's a ghostwriter as well as has her own book publishing company. What? So you don't have an excuse. Get your book published. Tell your story. God didn't bring you this far just to bring you this far.
No.
Share your story so that it can be a blessing to someone else. Again, if you're watching on Facebook, please like and share on YouTube. Share this and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified of other wonderful topics that we cover on our shows. And if you're on LinkedIn, please do the same. Love to hear your comments. Love to hear your questions. Dr. Baskerville is willing to answer your questions, even if it is through an email. If you're watching this recording, send her an email. She'll be glad to speak with you. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm
Thank you.
Pamela Marshall at the
Thank
Wellness Radio TV. Yes, Dr. Baskerville, I keep cutting you off.
No, I'm just saying thank you. Thank you for having me. My heart is absolutely full. Thank you.
Oh, and we are full as well, and we just thank you so much for your courage, your stick to itiveness, and most of all, your faith in God and your example that you have been and continue to be for all of us who are watching. We salute you, Queen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Thank you for watching. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment.